Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So it's nice to be with you all for the next 5 days. I would request the participants to turn on their cameras so that we can see your faces. Thank you. So I have been just observing the messages in the WhatsApp group. So I think you had a nice inaugural session this morning. I think it was very informative. Sorry, I could not join because of official work. And we also had the first session. So it's nice. So to say that, like, I think you should have you have a copy of the schedule. And I'm Dr. Shri Prabha. I'm with GRG for the past 12 years. This is my 13th year at GRG, and it's my alma mater. I did my MBA here, and then I joined here in 2008. And so that's to say I specialize in the field of HR, and now moving a bit towards general management and skilling courses. So into analytics, more into analytics and skill-based courses like critical thinking, negotiation, conflict management. So such kind of courses is what I am into for the past 3 years. And so another thing that I look at GRG SMS is the academic administration. So we are an autonomous institution. So I'm more into curriculum designing, designing programs for students, especially skill-related programs. So those are the other activities that I take care. So this is a brief introduction about me. So anything else you would like to know, I would be I would be happy to share. Good, sir. Thank you. And maybe like each one of you would have joined the session with some expectations. So like you have about 60 plus programs that AICT is offering during this particular week. So they had a common inauguration and everything. So what any specific reasons that you enrolled for this program?
Yeah, can I?
Yes, it's Mr. Manish.
That's from Tripura University, Agartala.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, my specialization is in marketing.
Okay.
I'm mostly dealing with consumer behavior, then consumer culture, consumer socialization. And I find that this part has been bearing with organizations also, because it is ultimately behavior that is coming in a confined periphery of organization, and at the same time without any confined periphery of customers. But all these individual behavioral instincts as well as group behavioral things, these are equally applicable in both these two courses. So, and I am teaching this subject also for BBA, and
Okay.
I have some interest in some of the papers which I am working on, institutionalization, then organizational climate, culture. So that's why I thought it will further enhance my skill and my understanding about this subject. So that is the main reason why I have actually joined in this course.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. Well said. So marketing and HR, they go hand in hand. So compared to finance and operations, marketing and HR, they go hand in hand, because all the concepts that you teach in HR, especially in the field of OB, behavior, managing people, so all that we can really apply it in the marketing domain and see how we could ultimately see to improve the performance of the employees. So in that context, these both are very closely intertwined when compared to other functional areas. True. Thank you. So I would like to listen to the expectation of the other friends in this team, this group.
Hello. May I?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I am Dr. Via Kanagavali from Saram Engineering College.
Yes.
Basically, I am teaching computer science and information technology. And
Okay.
but I am very interested in management papers. I generally have a look of those books apart from my core technology area. And I think
Okay.
as a teacher, we need to talk with people. We need to be a counselor. We need to be interacting with people more. So as a teacher, I think it's essential for us to know about people management. And
People
I am very
management.
poor in conflict management. So I generally avoid
Okay.
conflicts. So I needed to, I saw the agenda. I thought I will have some insight into what is all this about conflict management. Okay, how
Management.
can I be somewhat better in that?
Better than that.
That's the basic idea that I joined this
Nice.
course.
That's nice. That's nice, ma'am. But actually, like, it's all depends upon the personality of the people, whether they want to face conflict or whether they want to avoid conflict. So it all depends on the personality. So some people come what may, it's okay. For no reason or other, they will enter into a conflict and it just goes on. For others, I want my peace of mind and as well as others. So why
Yeah,
should
I
I,
am into
having
that.
known about you, why should I unnecessarily get into arguments and conversations? Let me be aram say, let me be in peace. So that
Yeah,
becomes
yeah.
the other type of person. I think we both are in that. That in
Yes, yes.
situations where it is, we will put down our foot and say, no, this is what it is. But where
Yes,
we think that we can avoid, it's okay. You just keep talking. I'll just move away from me. My peace of mind is more important than anything else.
yes, yes.
So that becomes.
Okay.
So we can take either this side or that side.
Okay.
But it's good. But it's good in situations where we'll have to face conflict. It would be better if we know how to manage and
Yes,
create a win-win situation so that both the parties mutually get benefited. So in that sense,
yes,
that context, this would be very, very much needed. I would say this would be very much needed. That is one. And
yes,
the other is um, like how is that we need to equip our students, teach our students to manage this. That becomes the other context because
yes,
it's going to be a tough time for our students in
yes,
the
yes.
future.
Correct.
It's going to be stiff competition and where it's going to be like more of conflicts, competition, I would say. More of
Yeah.
competition in that it's likely to be the survival of the fittest. So in
Yeah,
such
and it is also
situations,
very
how do we
difficult. uh, it is very difficult to create an impression in the grown minds, and like school teachers, where they are very dealing with very raw minds, fresh minds. We are into
minds?
college education where it is very difficult to create an impact, but we need to create an impact. We need to create some change in them. So
Yes,
I think that it is essential to for all the teachers, in fact, to have a insight of what is this organizational behavior, to understand more about psychology about people. So
psychology.
I study more books on psychology, organizational behavior, people management. So that is my general area of interest, apart from my.
Okay. In that way, like it's good that we get updated. At the same time, it's all how do we prepare our students? That becomes
Yes.
still more important. And
Yeah.
especially engineering, technical, that field, computer science, their people management skills are a bit less when compared to others because they talk
Yes. Yes.
more with machines and not with people. And even if they talk
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
people, they use quotes and very, very short quotes of communication. So
Yes.
in that
Yes.
short quote, how is that we will have to convey our message to them? That becomes very, very challenging
Yeah. They have
context.
a lot of technical jargons to speak.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly. And so like I think every day I'll be handling one session either in the forenoon or in the afternoon. So it depends upon like what topics was of interest I specialize in those topics is what I have handpicked from that. And so every day you will have to see my face and bear with me for the next 4 days, leaving out today. And let me see to what extent I can keep the sessions more interactive, enjoyable, participative, because all of us are in the are faculties, and all my sessions would focus on giving a little bit inputs about the basics, the theories, so that you understand that particular topic, you gain some insights. And the next would be how is that we can apply all those in our personal life, in our professional life, and also how do we equip our students to be better managers, better employees. So in that way is what I have planned my sessions for all the 5 days. So hope that's fine with you, because OB is something which is relating to people and more related to self. As you go along, you will get to know that. So in that, we'll have to look for ways by which we would be able to improve ourselves better. So every day we'll have to improve so that we become a better and better person. So in that process, you will have both personal as well as professional growth. And more important is how should you prepare our students. That's more important, so that they have a better career. They have a better career. So that's how I have planned. Is there any other expectations that you have from this session? So that I will be able to add or address those dimensions also.
Hello.
Yes, Tom.
Madam, why don't you some case studies also you take some case studies if possible?
Yeah, yes, sir. That's there. Case studies are there. Case lets are there. Small version, big versions, everything we will have, sir. Not to worry. But I'll not have two lengthy ones. So if I'm having it about maybe 2 or 3 pages, I'll give it to you a day in advance so that it will be easy for you to prepare and come for the session so that we can have discussions. Small case reads,
Okay,
4 or 5
thank you.
sentences, we can have it in that during the class.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Others? I know this is a long day for you. Morning, it's going to be late evening. If I'm able to hear from you, listen from you, I can plan the rest of the session so that it benefits you. What's the next step? Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Namaste, ma'am. I am Dr. Kumar Abhishek from Lucknow. I am working in an engineering college, Sagar Engineering College nearby the Lucknow, and basically I am from the HR background. And the reason behind this FDP is, according to me, I think degree is the beginning of learning. Degree is the beginning of learning. So once I think your learning has been started, and that's still going on. That's why I joined this session. Before that, I also joined the session of AICT in Universal Human Values, and so I think it's a learning, ma'am, learning and development.
Learning and development. And as you rightly said, sir, learning is a continuous process. The moment we stop learning, we are gone.
Yes.
The moment we stop learning, the moment we keep our ears closed, when we are not open to listen or understand and appreciate what is happening, that day, that's the end. So our growth and development stops with it. So it's all like how we need to have is the big ears, like how Lord Ganesha has, so that we can get as much information as possible and learning. So how do we imbibe all those and make ourselves better? So that's the approach we need to have. And when we say listen, we need to be a layer listener. So layer listener in the sense, let's not have any preconceived notions within us. I know this person is going to tell only this. What else? So why should I listen? So let's not have such preconceived notions. He may be talking for about 15 minutes. At least we will have 1 or 2 takeaways. So unless we remove all those, I call it as filters. I normally call it as filters. So the moment we remove filters, the better is what we would be able to learn. But if you look at the child, maybe about 1.5 years old, when they start observing and when they start talking, they ask a number of questions. What is this? Why is this? Why is it doing this way? Why can't it be done the other way? Why is it this color? Why is it that color? But over the years, when it goes, you find that we ourselves have hampered them from asking questions. Shut up, why do you keep on asking questions? It is as it is. So that's how, and so the ability of the child or a student to think, observe, think, and respond is getting minimized. So we are conditioning, we have conditioned them in this pattern. And so that happens. And so when they listen, what is that they are going to tell? That becomes the mindset. So that filter we have to remove. And now, thanks to technology, so the world is beautiful around us, but we view the world around us only through a lens, mostly with a camera or with the mobile phones. We don't really use our eyes to view that. So wherever we go, we are more interested, or we are more focused on taking pictures and saving it and recollecting it. So this, I did not give a good pose. So I should have stood this way. I should have turned my head little bit this way, left or to the right, or my chin down. So that's how we focus, but not really enjoying what is all around us. So those filters is what we need to remove. And that's why if you look at few parents, they have started going in for homeschooling. I will not send my child to a school. I will give the formal schooling through homeschooling. The concept of homeschooling, where they pull in about 10 or 15 children, different parents, they take the responsibility of teaching small topics, and those children, we find them to be far more intelligent, responsive, reactive, understanding people, everything. So that we have found. And I thought at this instant I should mention one of our student. She has 2 daughters. She's married and she has 2 daughters. So what she does is, both her daughters, she takes them on a trip. Say maybe take them to a bank, pack all the foodstuffs that are required. She will go sit in the bank or in front of the bank and ask the children only to observe what is happening around. What people are coming, what they are doing, what is that they are asking, how long they are staying, what are the activities that they do. Just keep on observing people, and then they will have to, they understand, and then they reflect upon that with her mother. So this she has started right from her 1.5 years old kid, and the other one was about 4-year-old. So from that time she has been doing this with her children, and they really are smart. They know about people, what they will do, how they will do, why they will do. They look, they relate, and they understand far better. That's the best way to teach people management and behavior of people. Yes. So with this small context, are there any other points that you would like to share with me? Your expectations before we proceed to the session? Okay, so if not, I thought I'll just share my screen. Hope my screen is visible to you all.
Yes, ma'am. Visible.
Yes. So this session thought we'll talk a little bit about job satisfaction, emotions, and moods. because the life we live is all bound with emotions and moods, and ultimately the satisfaction that we derive at the end of it. So job satisfaction is one topic that is of importance in the context of OB. Not only in OB, it comes to all functional areas in all domains, let me say. And ultimately, at the end of the day, are we satisfied with what we have done? That becomes the first question. And the other is my employer satisfied with my performance? What else should I do to improve? That becomes a second perspective. The third is from the employer point of view. Is this what this employee could deliver, or is it something more that he has the capability which we are missing out? Or if he is not doing, if he is not performing to the expectations of the employer, what is holding back? So those becomes the dimensions in which we tend to look at it. So job satisfaction is how do we feel, good or bad, about our jobs. If our work has been a bit taxing, we might feel like, oh, every day should I slog like this? What is that I'm going to get at the end of the day? Nothing. And that negativity will keep resonating within ourselves. And the next day morning, the moment you say, oh, yesterday was a long day, is today also going to be a long day? So why should I slog like this? I don't, I'm not happy with it, or I don't, I'm not interested to slog so, or I don't feel that for the work what I am doing, I am rewarded adequately. And so you think of looking for a better job or quitting. So whether we look things in a positive or in a negative manner about the job, in the sense what are the activities that we do out of it, by virtue of the position that we hold, that really determines whether we are happy or not happy, satisfied or not satisfied, or dissatisfied. So there will be a difference between this. I may have today my feeling would be positive, tomorrow it might be negative, but at the end when you look at, I may be satisfied with what I have accomplished within a particular time period. But at the same time, everything is good to me, but even at the end, I'm not, I don't think my work was complete. So that kind of feeling also we are likely to have. So what is that? And at times, there might be work will be easy, you enjoy doing it, but yet we don't derive that happiness, we are dissatisfied, we keep grumbling. And ultimately, it might lead to burnout and we leave a job. So those who are, there is always a difference between not satisfied and dissatisfied. Not satisfied could be because of few factors, but yet I may continue doing my job. But dissatisfied is totally, it goes to the other continuum, where I might think, I don't think it is worthwhile. And because of that dissatisfaction, your performance will come down, and then you may start looking for other jobs. Your too much of absenteeism, stress, your inability to cope with the work, all those would be the indicators of it. So satisfied, dissatisfied is what it matters. And it's all like how we look at it's okay, I'll be able to manage, I'll be able to do better, cope up and do, and then the dissatisfaction will get converted into not being satisfied, and later when we start understanding what the reality is, we may derive satisfaction out of it. So on job satisfaction, how do they normally assess is the managerial observation and interpretation. So this is the work that was assigned to me, and the satisfaction of my superior or my boss, I have completed. If they think, I may think the work is only 3/4 done, but when they think it is complete, it's fine. So, that would be conveyed to us. I am happy that you have done a good job, a reasonably good job at a limited time period, and when it is being appreciated, it's an indication that they are happy with our performance. or the best way to do that is through job satisfaction questionnaires. We have a number of questionnaires that was available. The famous one is the 15-item Minnesota job satisfaction questionnaire, which is widely used, tested across time periods, which also could be used. The reason is, or you can go in for a combination, because when we have filters and when we look at people, we are likely to be biased. And so it would always be better when we administer a questionnaire and then have it, because by observing we are more qualitative. But when we administer a questionnaire, we are likely to be more quantitative in nature. So the bias, everything could be nullified to the possible extent when we go in for a combination of using two different methods for assessments. And job satisfaction is the implications of the key work decisions. What will be the implications of key work decisions for job satisfaction? So you join an organization, you work there for a longer period, and if you look at our parents or maybe our grandparents, lifetime they would have worked with only one organization. So they never, because they worked for the organization, in turn the organization took care of all their requirements. So there was never ever a thought for them to think of leaving that and joining elsewhere, because in all forms their expectations were satisfied and it was met. But now this generation, and maybe even we, and maybe our children, there is no guarantee that they will stick on with an organization for more than 18 months or 24 months. And the question is, oh, it's almost 24 months that you're staying with the same organization. That means something is wrong with you. Maybe you're not a good performer, and so maybe you're hiding and you tend to remain with that organization. That's how people are labeling if an employee is attached with an organization for more than 2 years or so. And that actually compels the individual to prove to others, and so they forcefully shift to another organization. They are compelled to shift or to move to seek job elsewhere. So that also is happening, especially with this generation. But there could be other reasons. So I have autonomy in my work. I am able to perform. My performance is recognized, and so I prefer to stay or continue in the organization. And we need not. There is no need to prove to others what we are capable of and what is our worth. It's all to us and to our employer, and more is to us. The moment you find satisfied, it's fine. The moment you find it is not your cup of tea, you can just move ahead. And satisfied workers will have better attendance and less turnover. And more important is, we would be discussing about 3 alternative relationships that could exist between performance and satisfaction, which I found it very, very interesting. So the first argument that I would place is, satisfaction, it causes performance. So when I am satisfied with what I am doing, I would be able to perform more. So employees' work performance, they perform better. So the manager is happy and they see what best they can do to make them happy. But job satisfaction alone is not a consistent predictor of work performance. You cannot predict the work performance of an employee by just looking at the satisfaction he or she derives from that job. So that's a point that has to be remembered. And then the second argument is, performance causes satisfaction. So earlier we saw satisfaction causes performance, and now it is performance causes satisfaction. It is something like what in science we call it as a reversible reaction. Satisfaction leads to performance and performance leads to satisfaction. It goes either way. So when people are performing better, they reach the height of the performance, then they are satisfied. So that relates to a particular time period, and also when the rewards are linked with the performance, when the intrinsic and the extrinsic rewards that an employee gets from the employer. When that matches it, the performance that he has exhibited during a particular period, it will lead to satisfaction. So these both are reversible reactions. And the third is rewards causes both satisfaction and performance. So you pay them well in line with the you pay them well for what they have done. It will lead to satisfaction and it will also motivate them to perform better. So that's how it goes. But the size and the value of the rewards should vary to the level that we hold and also to the performance that the employee one has displayed within a particular period. So the co-workers or the peers, what we say, they should not have a feeling he did not do well, but yet he is rewarded. In other words, we call it as a fair reward system. So having a fair reward system and an equitable reward system is very, very essential, because that is what will lead to satisfaction as well as performance. And Sherman, Hunt and Osborne, they have identified that satisfaction, performance could be achieved by job design. So the job what is being assigned to an employee, if it fits to his personality, if it fits to his skill sets that he has, if it fits his aspirations, then he will perform well and ultimately his satisfaction also would be better. And that has been found to be very, very effective and also successful. That's what I would say. And that's the context why jobs are being designed and redesigned. So as far as the job design approaches are concerned, there are only 3 approaches that could be that organizations normally adopt. One is job simplification. So whereby you break down the job into small work so that it becomes easy for a person to do that. So to the possible extent it becomes easier, broken down into small pieces, tasks, in other words, we call it as technically, which will help them to do it very easily. And the other one is job enlargement and rotation. So where we keep on adding up more items into the job, and then you send him from one particular job to the other particular job, so that he will not have the monotony or the boredom, and it will also help him to understand how things are working in other functional departments. They would be able to appreciate and understand the interlinkages between the departments. And also more into job enrichment. You move it vertically so that you add more elements into it, and which will meet his skill capabilities and requirements so that he enjoys doing his work. So these 3 job design approaches have been really very, very effective. And job enlargement and job rotation, it leads to horizontal loading. That is, it increases the job breadth, adding up more activities one after the other, but they will be doing it at the superficial level. You go in for horizontal loading, leading to increase in the job breadth. Whereas job enrichment is we go in depth. It's more of vertical loading to increase the job depth. We go deeper and deeper, so that when we go deeper and deeper, we get to know better about the job, and we develop unique skill sets within us. Say for example, R&D. So those who are in the R&D department, they tend to be in the R&D only for almost 20 or 30 years or lifetime. They would work because they know what has to be done, how to improvise the product, how to come out with a new product based on the experience that they had over the years, what will work and what will not work. They have a better clue. So for such jobs, it's always better to go in for adding up more and leading to job enrichment than enlargement. But when it comes to more of administrative kind of job, enlargement and job rotation would be more appropriate. And the best thing is to have a combination of the enlargement and enrichment so that more flavor is added. So instead of just having dosa every day, if we have an onion dosa or a vegetable dosa or a carrot dosa, will it not be nice for us? So that is the same thing applies to job also. And instead of having the same chutney and sambar, if we have a variety, we would be happy, right? When breakfast or dinner is served, instead of the same sabji, if we have an alternative. So that's how our jobs also should be. Have more variety, go in depth, so that it gives an opportunity to explore what you are capable of and do it. In the sense, you also gain more and more skill sets within yourself. So that is what should be the focus. And then, how are we to design motivating jobs? Say if we talk to the recruiters, they say that we give them training for about 3 months or 4 months, that's fine. And if they are with us for somewhere around 18 to 20 or 24 months, it is fine. We have got back our ROI, that's the return on investment. How much they have spent on training, the salary, whatever they have given, that they try to get it back in return, the return on the investment that has been made on the employee. Say if my CTC happens to be 10 lakh per annum, for example. So for 2 years, maybe first year it was about 8 lakh per annum, and the second year it was about 12 lakh per annum. So put together it is 20 lakhs. So by the end of the 2 years, the employee would have generated a revenue of at least 25 to 28 lakhs to the organization. That is the reality. And so they want to keep this time period as less, because there is no guarantee that he will work beyond this 18 or 24 months. If he works, it is fine. If not, whatever I have invested or spent on him, I should have got back. That becomes, I should have obtained back. That becomes the focus from the employer perspective. And what is that as a HR I need to do to design or to design a job or to assign a job so that it keeps the spirit of the employees high. And that's where the combination of all these three comes. One is, what are the core job characteristics? Is there skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy, and feedback? So is there more things that I could do, or whatever I have done, is it something unique? What is my USP that I am doing? So that relates to both the task identity and the significance. Autonomy is, do I have the at least little bit of freedom to decide how, not on what has to be done, but how it has to be done? Is that autonomy available for me? And the most important thing is feedback. Whether it is good or bad, a feedback is very, very essential for an employee to perform better. Not only employee, even as individuals, feedback is essential. If I have done better, if they give a feedback that what you have done is good, I will start looking at how can I do it better, 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 and the best ultimately. If I have done wrong, there should be a candid feedback to tell this is wrong. And why do I say this is wrong? The reasoning, that's what we call it as candid feedback, not just telling wrong. Why do you say it is wrong? So only when that justification is given, I'll be able to identify, I'll be able to relate or get an idea or clue how it could be done better. So feedback is very, very critical. So, and more important is, I would say, it as candid feedback or a solid feedback. Good, why it is good. Bad, why it is bad. So that will help to identify the avenues for improvement for the individual, I would say. And next is the critical psychological state. Each one of us would be at a different state of mindset. So for one, achievement would be, For the other one, it is the satisfaction that they derive. For another person, it would be money would be a motivator. For some, like whatever I do, I should find it sensible, reasonable, logical. So that really matters to me, that self-satisfaction is what I need to derive at the end of the day. So that becomes another dimension. So these three is what should focus upon. One is meaningfulness of the work. I find meaning, I find what I am doing is worthwhile. That becomes another dimension. Or I am responsible. This is what I should have achieved in a particular time period. That becomes a second dimension. Or finally, it is actually what is the output. So 100 units I'll have to produce this particular day. Have I done 100 units? So that is what the actual results, not the outcome. The actual results and outcome need not necessarily be the same. So people might look at any of these three. Or finally, the individual work outcomes, what do they get at the end? The work motivation, high quality work performance, the best work that has been done. And then the high satisfaction with respect to the work, and it could also lead to low absenteeism and turnover. So these would be the outcomes. And so it has to become like a permutation and combination of looking at these 5, these 3, and these 4. So what matches to whom? That combination is what it has to be identified, and that's how the job has to be designed. And it's not so easy to do that. It at times, for few people, it just clicks the first lot. For few, the HR, they try to identify what really triggers them, what really holds them, and accordingly they keep working on it. And that's what we call it as engaging the employee to the job. What is that I need to do so that he loves doing his job, he is able to have that satisfaction, the organization is satisfied, and he also is satisfied at the end, and he has the intention to remain in the job for a reasonable period of time. So that becomes another dimension which HR also looks into. And the moderators for this. So moderators in the sense, the presence of any of these will improve the outcome, whether it is growth needs strength or knowledge and skill, or the satisfaction that we gain in that particular context. So for each one of this, the moderator is likely to vary, and at times you can also have 2 moderators. So, and it's easy to talk, but designing a job, taking into consideration all these factors is not so easy. And any observations till this? Friends, any observations till this, what we discussed?
No, madam, it's going fine. It's going fine.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. So, alternate work arrangement is a concept that is gaining importance in recent years, and alternate work arrangements tend to improve or add to the satisfaction of the employees. Say it could be compressed work weeks. Instead of working 6 days in a week, I work only 5 days, but extended working hour by 1. Instead of working from 9 to 5, 6 days, I will be working 9 to 6, 5 days. So Saturday, Sunday is totally off for me, and they have found this has been more productive. This has been more productive. And then next is flexible working hours. This is the target that has been set for me. I go at 10 o'clock, I finish my work and come at 7 o'clock. I go at 1 o'clock and finish my work and come at midnight 1 o'clock. This is more in the context of IT. They tend to give more of flexible work hours. So the target would be given, which they will have to complete within a particular time period. That has to be done irrespective. They don't mind when you come and when you go. But every day, once you punch in, you will have to remain in the office at least for 7 hours or 8 hours as the norms they have stated. And job sharing. So two people, one work, it is divided among two people. I do this part, you do this part, together we complete it within that particular time period. So job sharing is also gaining significance now. And work at home and virtual, this is the best thing I think we never ever imagine at the academia, that we would be handling classes from work at home, looking at the monitor only, the screen only, and then imagining students are at the other end and listening. So that's how I assume that I have not put you all to sleep and you are with me in the session, because I cannot see your face once I am going in on a presentation mode. So that's how things are, but they find that there are challenges in this, but it's all about how do we manage it. And whether it's a part-time work, a temporary part-time or a permanent part-time work. So specific hours is what I would take it up. So such alternate arrangements are gaining importance because one is employees or individuals, they feel that they need to have time for themselves. They have other priorities also in life for which they would love to devote time. That becomes one dimension. And the other is they might be interested in two different things which they would like to do it at, which they would like to take it up. So they prefer to go for temporary or part-time work. They prefer to take up part-time work. So morning I'll take up this work and afternoon I'll take up this work. So that kind of work, that kind of arrangements is also more they look at. And especially this generation, studies reveal that they prefer to go more of, they prefer to have compressed work weeks, flexible hours, and also this work at home. So organizations are looking in to give a combination of all this. And I think you should have studied or come across in newspapers that few organizations, they have decided to make work at home as a permanent thing henceforth, wherever possible. So it is enough that my employee comes to the organization maybe 2 days in a week or once a fortnight, rest, sit at home and work. And they found that working at home has helped them give more better performance, or their productivity, in other words to say, has increased. So the time that they spend on commuting, all those is really less. And more important is the rentals, the fixed expenses that they will have to incur. That is also, that will be a big saving for them. And so especially in IT, wherever feasible is what they are looking on, especially in marketing and sales also, they have been working on this. So it is enough so that I need not give you a fixed seat in my office. In rotation, you come and go. So that's the objective or the idea. So that also we need to be planned with. We need to plan for, and we need to accept it. And then the most important topic, something which is close to my heart, and something which I'm really fascinated about, is emotions. How good are we in managing, regulating our emotions, as well as understanding the emotions of others? How good are we in that? Ever have we ever thought how the other person feels when we are just giving them a comment? Have you ever thought about it? So we have children at home. So when you ask, okay, when they come and show you the marks that they have scored in a test, so somewhere if it is about 24.5 out of 25. So the next question, what do we ask? What is the next question that we ask?
Why not 25?
Why not 25? Very good, sir. Then why not 25? Then
Who stood fast, or what is your rank?
what is your rank? How many scored 25? How many scored 25? So having put up these two questions, have we ever thought how a kid would feel? If the same question, if our spouse asks us, so we have an annual performance appraisal, and say based on annual performance appraisal, our points is about say 120 for 130, or let us say 140 for 150. So when you come and share with your spouse, and if they ask you this question, why only 140 for 150? Who scored above 145? How many are above you? How many have performed better than you? How would we feel?
Not really good.
How would we feel? Not really good. So the same thing applies to our kids also.
Yeah, of course.
For me, increment is for us, increment it is 10,000. For them, it is 11,000. Why that 11,000? If someone asks you, we feel bad, right? So that's more important. So, and it's all like before posting up such questions or posing such questions, it's equally important for us to think how will the other person feel when we ask such questions. So it's always good that we put ourselves in the shoes of others and then put across questions. And that's where emotions, moods, understanding, regulating, managing, all those, it really has a significance. And that's what we would be discussing. So, but we would have experienced in our service, maybe of 5 years, 10 years, or 15 or 20 years of service, that our managers have no emotions. Our managers have no moods. They are robots. They don't have any feelings. And it is irrational. There are no space for emotions and moods at the workplace. But we are human beings. We are bound by emotions and moods, and that's what it keeps us moving forward. And managers were trying to create an environment where there are no emotions, no fluctuations of moods. Everything is like a standstill, but that will never ever work. More and more you socialize, the more and more is what you will learn, and better would be your performance. So that's what we need to understand. Because why they felt so was, when we are emotional, we are likely to be disruptive. And when we are emotional, they felt that it will affect their productivity. And they failed to observe positive emotions, and they observed only negative emotions, or something which was not good was only observed. And so that's the reason why they gave least importance for emotionality or for emotions at the workplace. So now it is something like you cannot separate. If you find like you will have to work in your own cubicle without turning this side or that side or moving to the other person, you feel that your day is gone. Can you be can you contain yourself without meeting anyone for one full day? Sharing with others? That's impossible. So the more and more you give opportunity at the workplace to meet people, to interact people, the better and better is what the liveliness at the workplace is likely to be, and therefore a satisfaction as well as productivity. That's why they say, like, they give small breaks in between. Say maybe a morning, maybe 15-20 minutes, meet together, have a cup of coffee, maybe about 2 hours or something, again meet, have a cup of coffee, chat for about 15-20 minutes, share what has happened that day, and having lunch together. So just creating small spaces to move with each other and to express ourselves, so that our workplace becomes more and more lively. So it's all about what emotions and moods. So emotions are intense feelings or strong feelings that are directed towards someone or something. So you don't like a person, you see him, you lose your temper, you get angry. Or you look at something, maybe a lizard or a centipede or a millipede, it's gone. You get that feeling of fear or irritation or whatever, frustration, all those things that leads to. So it could be, but whereas moods are, it's not that intensive, and it need not have a stimulus. But whereas emotions, something is what will trigger you. But moods, there is no need that something should trigger you. It could be a natural phenomenon that could happen within us, and it is less intense. So mood swings, it's like a sinusoidal wave moving up and down in a particular day is likely to happen. But whereas emotions are like discrete zeros and ones, it will be there for some time, being hard or angry, and then happy for some time, and then it just goes like zeros and ones. Whereas moods are almost like a sinusoidal wave. That's how I look at it as. So next I thought we will just have few discussions. So what are the emotions that you have experienced in the past hours? Maybe 11 o'clock the inauguration started, and it's almost like now 4:20.
Madam?
Oh my God, 4:20.
Excuse
Yes,
me, ma'am. Can
Yes,
you give a
ma'am.
better clarity on the difference between moods and emotions?
Sure, sure.
Maybe with an example.
Emotion. Okay. Say, see, emotions is when someone scolds you, or you did something which was pointed out in front of others. How would you feel?
I didn't get you. Can you repeat?
Okay. It's a small work that was assigned to you by the by your superior, and there were small mistakes in that, which was an oversight for you, So when your superior identified that and pointed out those mistakes in front of your subordinate, how will you feel?
Hello.
It's very embarrassing.
How will you
It depends.
feel?
It depends.
It will be
Hello?
very embarrassing. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm listening.
No, maybe I continue with the speakers because I had an internet problem, so the complete scenario I couldn't listen. But I go with the previous answer. If it's going to be more embarrassing, so will you define embarrassment as an emotion or as a mood?
It would be sorry, there was a little bit of internet connectivity problem at my end. Can you repeat? I could not hear you completely. Sorry for that.
No, actually, due to the same internet problem, I couldn't listen to the scenario,
Okay.
the examples which you have given. So I go with the previous speaker's answer. The previous speaker told that embarrassment is the answer. That may be the situation for that particular speaker, the person who have replied. So now I would like to know, this embarrassment is the mood or an emotion?
Embarrassment is a mood, because you will feel embarrassed for some time, and then when you are able to come out of it quickly, it is fine. But when that because of that embarrassment, if you just walk out of the room, walk out of your superior's room, then it becomes an emotion.
Okay.
You feel embarrassed, but when you realize that it was something that would have been done better, or when you felt that he could have put forward it to you in a better way, then you feel bad, but you get out of it quickly.
But embarrassment at that point of time, I will be like wordless. I don't know how to express it. But emotions are expressions oriented, right?
Yes, emotions are expressions oriented. That's what I said. Yes, continue. Please.
Embarrassment, I may be speechless or wordless. I may be like still at that point of time. I don't know what to do because the situation may be like that. So
Yes.
how this expressions may be read by other person, or even I was clueless what is happening. So how this can be defined from the point of view of an emotion?
Emotion. So when it's identified, you become speechless or you find something shocking. But if you are able to come out of it, you realize it and you come out of it quickly, that's fine. But when you become frozen or you vet it out, or you reciprocate that in some other way, no, what I have done is right. When you start an argument or you feel bad, you cry, you weep, or you shout, or you just walk out of the room unable to manage yourself, then it becomes an emotion. So you are not able to accept the feedback that was given to you. That is one. And more important is in front of your junior. In front of your junior. And when that it becomes so explicit and that becomes visible, that could be read from your face, that's what we call it as emotion.
Madam,
yes,
as we know in emotional intelligence, actually thought leads to emotion and continues for a longer time. If somebody stays on emotions, then it transfers to mood. Like from thought, it leads to emotion, and emotion, if you stay for a longer time, then it transfers to mood. Is it right?
Sir, I would like to add a point. Madam, Dr. Sri Prabha can give a clarity on that.
Yes.
So mood swings, what I perceived so far is the mood is about something about your physical hormonal changes, especially for women. There are certain periods like during the maternity time, or the mood swing happens because of majority of our internal biological imbalance. Emotions are something towards our external environment response. Is it something like that? Is there
it's
a fact
also
in
like
this?
that. It is triggered. Emotions are triggered by something happening. Emotions are triggered by something that happens external to us.
So
it is being triggered by something.
So emotions can be which is internally depends upon many other factors, not only with the external factor. Maybe when I wake up itself, I don't feel like it's a happy day for me. So I don't know the reason. There is no some triggering factors. Can I perceive even like that?
No. So why when you wake up that not exactly, but a little bit a slight change in the way how I'll try to put it in this way. Say emotions, it could be the response, the feeling that we have because of something from outside us. It has triggered within us. That could be one dimension. The other dimension is certain things that has happened over a period of time, when it adds small things, when it has added up and piled up within us. One particular time point is what it bursts out. Say the example that you mentioned, when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel good. Why? Because certain things, what has happened that particular day or that particular week, everything was within your mind, and certain those thoughts, it was daunting your mind, and that's why you don't feel good.
So what did you name this? Do you name it as an emotion or as a mood?
That it depends on, you don't feel good when you get up that particular morning, but immediately you have a cup of coffee or see someone, and with that, if that mindset what you had within you, if it gets changed, then it is mood.
Okay.
But this is likely to stay for a little longer period and it is more intense.
Okay.
Moods
Thank
will
you.
be less intense. Moods will be less intense.
Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying the doubt. Thank you. Because this is a very long term, I'm having this confusion. That's why I thought I can use this.
That's very nice. But at times it becomes very difficult to distinguish between an emotion and a mood.
Okay.
Because of certain emotions that are there within us, we will have frequent mood swings.
Okay.
When something, we call it as something which is harboring within us. We have something within us which we are not able to share, express. Some angry, we are angry with someone which we could not scold them, or which we could not put it across. Certain things which are within us, the moment we see them or the moment we tell something, it just comes out like a volcano.
Yes.
So at times we know that there is no use in the volcano erupting, so that spike will come and then we will tell calm down and set it aside. So then it becomes a mood. So how long it stays.
Okay.
So it becomes, it's very difficult actually to have a line of demarcation between emotions and moods.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's
Got
very
it, madam. Thank you so
line
much.
of demarcation between that.
Okay.
So what are the emotions that you have experienced in the past hours? So it's almost more from morning 11 o'clock we were there, right? So what are the emotions that you have experienced till now? And when we say emotions, now we are able to relate it to emojis only.
Maybe feeling happy and satisfied to get upgraded with the knowledge.
Yes.
And sometimes feel bored, too much of lectures. Yes. Maybe that is one kind of an emotion.
Yes. A little bit of frustration and irritation. It's a long day.
No, frustration, irritation may not be, it's boredom, maybe a kind of a boredom may be there.
Boredom.
Because same.
Boredom. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe fatigue also, sitting on a seat for a sleep.
Yes, fatigue, yes. Listening, listening, the quest for knowledge that we have. So, and the next question I will put forth is, you come across a number of situations, right? In few situations, we react, and in few situations, we respond. In what situations you react and in what situations you respond? There is a difference between these two, reacting and responding.
Okay, if somebody hit me, I will react.
Okay.
If somebody is in my position, I'll try to support them. I'll try to defend them. So that is a response.
Okay. That's a response. Okay. When somebody hits you,
I'll react.
You will react. Okay, but Jesus, he preached that if you hit on one side of your cheek, show the other. That is response, not to react. But we cannot.
No. When I quoted it as somebody, that means the person whom I don't know, I will react. If it's my father, I will respond. Okay, give me one more slap.
Okay, if it is your father-in-law or mother-in-law, sorry.
No, depends. The kind of affection what they show to me, my response or reaction will be. So as of now, they take care of me and my child very well. So I will respond. I will not react.
Respond or react, but
madam.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, I feel when we are approaching something from unconsciousness or subconscious minds, then we go for react, and when we are approaching something from our conscious mind, then we respond.
Respond, exactly, very well said, sir. So it is the the sudden spike within us, that particular moment, we call it as parasympathetic nervous system, that we react. Subconsciously we react. So consciously, when we understand this is how it is, and we start accepting it, when we think, when we imbibe within it, we tend to respond. So life will have both reactions and responding. The more and more we react, the more and more we become emotional. The more and more would be your mood swings. But when we practice to respond, we will be able to have better control over our emotions and also our moods.
Yeah. Ma'am, can I in between a bit?
I would like.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, during my MBA time, I had one OB faculty. Madam used to tell us in this way that we are not Pavlov's dog. So this is the comment which is created. We are not Pavlov's dog. Pavlov's dogs, Jan Pavlov, classical conditioning.
Okay, got it.
We are not Pavlov's dog. Actually, in case of Pavlov, there is stimulus and response, but there was no space. There is no space because it is an animal. But we are human being, so we have a space in between stimulus and response where we can think, we can feel, we can understand. So the more we can expand that space, the more we will be responsive, and the less will be that space or will be conditioned, the more will be the reaction.
Very nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's really a beautiful way she has put it across. And that's where the role of emotions and moods will come into.
True, very
true. The space we have is what we will be able to express all this. Yes. Thank you. That's really nice, sir. So I'll just go to the next slide. So what triggers your emotional reactions? Is it people, places, times, or words? So at times, when the alarm rings early morning, oh, is it 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? Should I get up? So that's how we will feel. And then, okay, it's a day, let's go ahead with it. And then it changes. So like that, each one of us should be able to make out what will trigger our emotional reactions. For some places, it doesn't. Time, if it's too late or mid or late evening or late night, it doesn't. For few, it is words. And especially one word, no. The moment we hear this word no, we are put off. It just comes like an antenna. Why no? Am I right?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to add a point.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Dikshit here. I just wanted to add the point of what we have discussed about the emotion reactions and whether it's situational. So I would say that it's sometimes it also depends upon the person's attitude and how his basic nature. Some people are not very reactive. Some people are not very reactive, but some people are really too reactive. Maybe they react to any place or even a people or a person, or they might react to their spouse, and once they react out of anger, maybe the situation leads to anger, or they react towards anger, and then, of course, the anger might lead to an emotional setback, an emotional setback, that because the person reacted to the situation or to a particular person, now it is an emotional setback of feeling sad, which also leads to a mood, a bad mood. So it is a link, I would say, a bad mood. So or else emotion, a situation, for example, there is a situation, there is a demise of somebody, it is situation, you reacted. you experience a bad emotion, and then it leads to a bad mood. So likewise, when we conduct or when we take some survey of any service or survey from any individual, so it is very important because the customer or the consumer will react or they give a different feedback. Maybe they are under the emotional setback today, or they are not in the mood. Like, for example, did you enjoy the party? If the question, did you enjoy the food? Did you enjoy the party? Maybe in the given time, he is individual. He's not in the feedback because he had a bad sleep. So it's a situation which leads to an emotion, and the emotion itself leads to a mood swing or a mood change. When it does, because the person, place, time, or any word, and I would say it's a link. It's actually linked. A situation leading to emotion, emotion reaction leading to a mood swing.
Very true, ma'am. And that's what we would be looking in, how to manage all these, our emotional reactions. How do we manage it? And that's what the context of emotional intelligence we will be touching upon it shortly. So that's what we would be looking at shortly. Very beautifully you have mentioned it. And it's all like, how are we able to manage all this? That's where lies our strength. See, that's where our strength should lie.
Sure, ma'am.
So these are the 6 basic emotions: anger, fear, sadness, happiness, disgust, and surprise. They lie on a continuum. So the left end anger to the right end surprise. That's how we can lie. And we always now related to emojis, as I said. So it would be nice if each one of us are able to fill in this table. Participants will request you to mute your microphones, please. So it would be nice if you are able to maintain a journal of what percentage of the day we are angry, happiness, fear, disgust, surprise, and sadness, all the 6 emotions, and why are we. So once if you are able to make this journaling, we can make ourselves a better person. So it's we who will have to work to make ourselves a better person. No one else will do it for us. And emotions can never be neutral. So it goes from the high positive affect to the low negative effect, and the low positive effect to the high negative effect. It's like a spin wheel. It goes across. With you for your reference. And emotions aid in our decision making process. This is where we need to be careful. Think, feel, and then make a decision. Think, feel, and then make a decision. That's where the role of EI will come. So emotions are necessary so that we take rational decisions. So we tend to look into we wear the habit of others or put ourselves into the shoes of others and then make a decision. So that's why we say think, feel, and then make a decision, so that none of the decisions we take will go wrong. I don't know. Yes, whose microphone is turned on? I request you to turn off your microphone, please. And as mentioned, the emotions and moods, it will vary across. It depends on personality. So few people, they are always a sad makeup. They always think bad, negative, or they feel sad for no reason. That's how their personality is. For few, it could be the day and time of the day or week, the weather, stress, work, social activities. The more and more you meet people, the more and more you are happier. So social interactions will keep up our emotions. and make us happy. And sleep deprivation, and they say exercises, it really releases the required combination of hormones that will make us feel good. Age, older people, they have fewer negative emotions because all the experience that they had over the years have really molded. And women, they say, as we discussed earlier, it's because of the biological changes that happens. And that's one. And the other is, they say it's more related to the socialization than to the biology. So the more and more you interact, the more and more they become better than being confined within more in the four walls. And this emotional labor is you have within yourself, but when you are not expressing it. So it could happen in two ways. They may be feeling something, you might not like a person, but yet for the sake of it, you hide all those feelings within you, and yet you give a broad smile. We normally do that. And this, when we are involved in exhibiting that behavior for a long period of time, it might lead to burnout. You don't like, but yet you pretend that you like it. So, and that way it just comes as your surface acting or deep acting. So surface acting is whatever you just comes to that particular moment, that particular mind, you just exhibit it. Whereas deep acting is you have to try to change yourself internally, which is against your personality. So that will lead to more stressful, and that will lead to a personality conflict, which is not acceptable. And that's why if we have this introvert and extrovert, right? When I'm an introvert, I'm not much interested in meeting people or talking to them. But when I take up the role in a marketing or sales, where my job is only to meet people, engage conversation and close the deal, every day going to work will be a strain for me. I don't like it, but yet I am compelled or forced to take up my job. So such things will be detrimental for the individual over a long period of time, which should be avoided. So you don't like it, but it's like how we have to start accepting it and start loving it, so that we have a beautiful or a nice career. Certain things, what you like in life, when you get it, it is fine. Certain things we might not get whatever we expected or we wanted, but whatever we have got, it will be good if we accept it, so that we can live peacefully. And that's what we need to change our mindset or condition our mindset, I'd say. And this is what we have discussed. So this is where emotions would be applied in the field of OB, when we are recruiting people, when we are making decisions, creativity. When we're happy, we'll get new ideas, openness, flexibility. So motivation, leadership, especially in the context of leadership, emotionals and emotional intelligence, moods play a very, very critical role in negotiations. So whereby manage conflict, negotiation, have a win-win situation. Trying to understand the pulse of the others and working on. So in customer services, attitudes, deviant workplace behaviors is not acceptable. Especially children, they would say, is always talking to the others and disturbing. So, but they are by that nature, which has to be, which the teacher has to understand it and accept it. And then another important point is culture. So culture has an effect on emotions, and in different cultures, emotions will be perceived differently, and yet that has to be appreciated and accepted. So the value of each of those emotions, it will vary across cultures. Say here, say the example, if someone passes away in the family, we cry aloud, so that the entire neighboring houses knew. But whereas in the Western countries, it's not that they mourn internally and they weep for a long period of time. But that has to be respected when they are silent, which should not be perceived in a different pattern. So across these cultures, what are those differences it would be nice if we understand it and accept and appreciate it. And this is something which I have found it very useful and very interesting. Being thankful. Are we thankful for what we are, for the life for what we are now, and for the life we are living? Yes or no?
Yes, yes, madam. Of course.
Yes, we are thankful. So, have we ever felt thankful for having not achieved or not got something? So I just give a small situation for you to read. Hope my screen is visible. A young woman was sitting at the dining table, worried about the taxes to be paid, housework to be done, and to top it all, her family was coming over for the Thanksgiving the next day. She was not feeling very thankful at that time. And then when she turned sideways, she saw her young daughter scribbling in her notebook. So she said, "What was that you are doing?" The daughter replied, "My teacher has asked me to write a paragraph on negative Thanksgiving for homework today." She asked us to write down things that we are thankful for, things that make us feel not so good in the beginning, but turn out to be good at the end. Have you ever thought about that? And that's what is negative Thanksgiving. So when the mother peeked into her book, this is what her daughter has written. I'm thankful for final exams because that means school is almost over. I'm thankful for bad tasting medicine because it helps me feel better. I'm thankful for waking up to alarm clocks because it means I am still alive. So in each of the negativity, if you are able to identify a positive thing, that really will keep us moving ahead. That will really help us manage our emotions and our moods. That's what we call it as the positive side of the negativity. And so the mother wrote, she had to pay taxes, but that meant she was fortunate to be employed. I am earning, so I am paying taxes. She had household work because she has her own home to live in. She had to cook for her family for Thanksgiving. That means she had a family and she is not alone. So instead of complaining about negative things in life, let us start looking at the positive things of it. So what is the positive in your negatives? What is the positive in your negatives? I think the last 6 months, this COVID-19 pandemic has helped us realize a number of positives in the negatives that we have had experienced or experiencing. Say the bee, the grandma. I just leave these two thoughts for you to think about, the positive and the negative part of the bee, how it thinks and how we look at it as, and similarly an old granny. And the most important and the last topic that I would like to touch upon today is emotional intelligence. And I would just mention I would just request you all to read the first sentence what is put. So emotional intelligence is nothing but being smart with our emotions. How smarter are we with our emotions? Where we will have to display emotion in what quantum, that is what it has to be displayed or shown at that particular time to that particular person at that particular moment. That's why they say we need to be smarter with our emotions or smarter with our feelings. So for being smarter with our emotions or feelings, what we need to do is we need to know or identify our emotions, facilitate is exhibit our emotions, understand the emotions of others, and finally manage your own emotions. When we are able to do these all four things, it's all nothing but becoming smarter with our emotions, and that's what it has to be. We need to practice it. And when it comes to an emotional leader, how is that we need to develop ourselves into an emotional leader? That is very, very important. So what you will have to share and when you will have to share at the appropriate time, and doing what is right that particular moment. Say when an employee has lost a loved one, you can share an incident that has happened in your life and what you did to manage and come out of it. So similarly at the workplace, when a person is being bullied by his co-workers, you will have to support the employee who is being bullied, but at the same time make the employee understand that what went wrong and why he is being bullied and how he has to correct himself. So that's more important, not taking sides, trusting our intuitions, look for solutions and not blaming others. Most of the times we try to put the blame on the other person, but how many give us solutions for problems? They just magnify the problem, but not solutions. And then identifying what is important in that particular moment or what is critical and what is that it has to be done. And then changing the meaning that we give to the negative events. That is more important. So start looking at that's what it call it as negative Thanksgiving. Start looking at the positivity in each and every negative thing that we have come across in life. That will really make us a better, emotionally better person. I would say a better person, an emotionally strong, balanced person. And I would just leave one thought you is social intelligence. How many of us focus on this, on building up our social intelligence? I feel that now with more and more of technology, use of technology and relying more on gadgets, social intelligence is slightly declining. Because we always tend to live in a world where we are digitally connected and not emotionally, socially, or physically connected. And each of us have our own way of seeing the world, a unique way of seeing the world. It's all based on the personal philosophies we have, the beliefs what we have, the perspectives and the life experiences. Because of that, as I said in the beginning, we apply filters and we see. But let's remove those filters and then let us look the world as it is. So we don't see things as they are, but we see things as we are. So this is where we need to change our perspective. Look at it, see what it is, understand, perceive and accept it as it is. That is very, very important. And social intelligence is nothing but the ability to successfully build relationships and navigate through social environments. Because relationships are a very big part of our life, and especially in a country like India, we are socially bounded or socially connected. We cannot confine ourselves without or talking to others. And we are good in relationships for a longer period of time. So it's more important to be socially smart than being book smart. If you are socially smart, we are turning ourselves into better people. You know what to talk, what not to talk. You know better how to deal with that particular person, so that we don't get into conflicts or difference of opinions, and you try to balance and go. So social intelligence is more important. I'll just leave one thought with you, one thought with you. So that is, how many of us are able to maintain a conversation for 1 hour? It is okay that we text it or in Facebook, all those, it's all fine. But face to face, are we able to maintain? For how long? I felt that we are losing on that. I felt that we are losing on that. If you are able to build on that, we become more socially intelligent. The more socially intelligent we turn ourselves, the better emotionally balanced or managed person is what we would become at the end. So this is something important for us, and maybe because of technology or something or distance, or we are virtually connected, but yet see to what extent we would be able to maintain, sustain, and have healthy conversations with our family members, with our colleagues. So that's more important. So that will really help us to share what we have, listen, accept, learn, and make ourselves a better person. So that's more, that I feel is more important, and that has been really helpful. Socially intelligent, how to improve this quality? See, it's all to keep an open mind, move with people, network, listen, have discuss on a variety of topics, healthy conversations. That's fine. So a known person or an unknown person, to what extent you are able to get along, how quickly you are able to make friends with them, and what do you share, what to share and what not to share. That becomes another perspective. That becomes another dimension that we should never miss. So that we can. There are few exercises that you can take it up to improve your emotional intelligence as well as your social intelligence. That's what they say, man is a social animal. Only when you allow human beings to move with people, we are as we are. If not, what do I say? Our emotions, our moods, they become stronger and stronger. I have few questionnaires with me. Maybe I'll share it in the WhatsApp group. It's on emotional intelligence. You can take up that assessment, and the interpretation of that is also given at the end. You can use that to see how you can make yourself a better person. So, if there are any questions or any clarifications? So you are not there in the WhatsApp group. Can I get the link? I have it as a hard copy. Sorry, soft copy. I will. Okay, I'll share the link. Pavitra, I'll share the link, Pavitra. So that you can download. Or I can email it to the common group that we have. So any clarifications, friends? It's 5:04. Let me not hold you back. So if you have any clarifications, I'll put it in the common group. If you have any clarifications or something that you would like to share, we will have it reserved for tomorrow. We'll take it up tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
If we have no further questions, because we'll be meeting every single day, right? So So whatever you just reflect upon it, and we can very well discuss it in the session that we have tomorrow. Okay. So thank you for your time, and hope you found the session useful and interesting. At least 1 or 2 takeaways for you.
Yes. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you,
Good,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. In communicating to you through an email, right? I will share the PPT as well as the questionnaires that I have relating to that through that email. Okay, friends, we will meet tomorrow. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.